Okay, and we're back with Christine Lyon, and she will continue talking about Manet's work.
So I won't go into this too much because I could go on forever, but basically I think finding an artist or even like a specific painting, just going into it and researching it further, you'll find out what your attraction is beyond just the, oh, I don't know, I like it. And you'll figure that stuff out as you look into it more. Like something I really like about this is like the joke about having a cat in the corner with this woman here. So it's like kind of obviously a pussy joke. And then like if you research into this era more, you understand that these shoes actually indicate that she's a prostitute because that was indicative of prostitutes at the time. They wore their shoes to bed. So there's all these kinds of things that are making offense to this classic nude figure. And so people were really pissed at this painting. And another reason was that she's looking right at us. So something I'm really looking at in this figure that we see over and over again is our um, idolatry or our love of the fact that she's so passive. And so having that confrontation, I kind of allude to that gesture in the way that this figure has like this kind of turn of the head. So this figure is looking both into the world of the painting, but also outside of it and kind of confronting the viewer. So you can see by looking at Velasquez and Manet and then my work that this figure is kind of an amalgamation between myself and that body. I even like kind of wore a little bun to make that a little clearer. Um, but that it's somewhere between myself and I, and it's kind of this and this classic figure, and is kind of the id. It's a psychological space that I'm iterating with the figure. I think that's why I'm attracted to it so much because it's kind of this conductor for storytelling. All books begin with a character and like some of my favorite music is blues music or rap music where there's like a central figure kind of entrapped in that. And I love movies and television shows that are character based. So I think that's where my attraction to the figure comes in. And it's also like my attraction to metaphors. So a lot of blue is in my paintings, and that's for like obvious blues, blue, feeling blue kind of things. But it's also part of the RGB color scheme, which is what we get from it's how screens filter light to us. So like these laptops and these phones that I'm thinking of and or that my figures are engaged in, that color scheme is also what informs um, the colors I choose in these paintings. Um, and I'd say that conceptually, as a more broad spectrum, what I consider in painting is just like capital F, capital P figure painting. Like I look to figure painters and their writing and their work and just get influenced by their work as a way to think about what I'm doing and kind of looking at these traditional practices of doing it. And I'm trying to expand that a little further because I feel like my practices of figure painting come very much from like a European and Western tradition, but there's also like a figure painting tradition in the Middle East. You see it a lot um, in native painting and wall painting. Like there's this figurative tradition there, and like in Africa as well, which is what Picasso kind of took from to make his work. And so, like, and also Japanese print work, which is like I do a lot of prints, and I feel like I look a lot to that as a way of thinking about line and like cartooning, kind of as coming from a Japanese and American tradition of cartooning and thinking about exaggerating poses like that, and how I think color and that cartooning aspect, along with kind of my silly titles, add to the humor aspect of the work. So that's the kind of iconography or the imagery that pushes those notions of like a little bit of humor to some of this darkness and blues.
And we just talked about iconography in our last module, about how there's like a coded language being used in a lot of paintings. And I think you talked about that in Manet's Olympia as well. Like the shoes, you wouldn't automatically catch that reference unless you knew about it ahead of time. But that's kind of the story that goes into a lot of these paintings, and that's what's happening a lot in your work as well.
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to cultivate too is like I was very interested in how universal those images were for Manet. Like a French audience looked at that painting and knew those shoes meant she was a prostitute. But I think that there's something really interesting about in a modern age with a wider audience that, you know, I've put tissue boxes in my paintings to kind of signify this sappy, saccharine sadness and like the grossness of that. But it changes and morphs depending on who's looking at it and what that symbol means to them. Like even in this era, as I'm making this art that has the same symbols, the tissue box is much more sinister and has a different connotation. So that those things change, and I think that's what's so exciting about an image as opposed to text, is that it has that morphing ability. So I do have a writing practice as well, but I think that's why painting has interesting storytelling capacities, because the story can change depending on who's looking at it in a much more broad way than literature. Literature does that a little bit, but like it doesn't have as much wiggle room as a painting. And then Yvette also asked me to kind of cover, you know, career opportunities and things I'm looking at as I am a professional artist and what that looks like. And I love teaching art. That's like one of my favorite things. Like, again, I could have talked about that Manet painting all day. I could have done a class on that. But, and I think that that is a lot of the opportunities for artists. So I feel like loving teaching is a good thing if you're thinking about going to that, because a lot of it is educational opportunities, even if it isn't at high school or a college. It's you know, at the gallery level where you're showing people the work and kind of creating an educational opportunity in the museum or the gallery. But other ways of working have been you know, freelance work. Before I went to grad school, I was a scenic artist, so I was doing set painting, and I can't say that that doesn't influence what I do now. So I think having that outlet was an interesting way to navigate my art practice. So there's, even though it was a more commercial utilization of it, and then there's also, I think, a very valid thing is, as an artist, like, you have to love what you do. It's like, it's a struggle, and sometimes that includes taking on other passions as your career to subsidize your practice. And a lot of artists are also activists, and so that's something I've been looking into as well, as getting into nonprofit work or working on that level, and you know, finding more creative solutions to use my problem solving abilities. But it's not easy, and part of it too is like, if you're, that's the route, is also looking at grant opportunities and looking at what you can offer to specific institutions that you're interested in. But it's, you have to really love it, because it's a lot of air. I've applied to probably 20 things this year and gotten into one, and it's just kind of, you have to love it to do it. But if you love it, do
Nice.
it.
Thank you for that. Very inspirational. Do you mind just
I
quickly?
hope so. I hope I wasn't negative.
Yeah, you'll do great. I've no doubt. But if you would scroll through so we can
Oh,
see
sure.
before we go, kind of just I
So,
think,
yeah, please look at our MFA website. I'm scrolling through it fast here, but you can obviously look through on your own. I really recommend, obviously look at my work. I'm Christine Lyon. It will also have my website information on there. But I'd really recommend looking at John Roy, Arlene Correa Valencia. Unfortunately, I think a lot of her work she's decided to censor, so it'll be hard to see. But if you can look at her website, she has really fantastic work as well.
nice.
Um, and also Courtney Odell, she's a really fantastic abstract painter in my cohort. And if any of you are interested in photography, Jacob Lee, Peshwan Lee, he does really interesting photography. So if you
Thank
want to look at
you.
that website, you can look at that. And those are the people I would recommend you look at if you're interested in those painting.
Nice.
And then that one photographer.
Great. Yeah, check that website out, everybody, so that way you have a curated picks from Christine for what are the ones worth looking at. I'm sure all of them are worth looking at, but I always like getting getting some kind of curated ideas of what's working really
Yeah.
well.
Well, for the website, I have, I believe, 6 images there. So I think that's a nice selection of the things I have. And if you're curious about more work I have my website as well.
Nice.
And then I also have some of my creative writing on this website under the ideas section. If any of you are interested in fiction, poetry, or memoir, there is that on here as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks, Christine.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Like I said, I will be reporting back to you with any other questions that some of these students might have about painting. The one last question I had is, are most of these done with oil or acrylic?
So most of the paintings on the website on the MFA website are done in oil. So this first one is oil and oil pastel. So that's like a stick of oil with beeswax instead of linseed.
I think I have one right here.
Yeah. Oh wait.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the pillows are also painted with oil. But this is also oil. This piece is on paper, and this is acrylic gouache, ink, and charcoal. So these rougher lines, that's all charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the red is gouache and acrylic, as is the background.
Do you mix the gouache and the acrylic? Oh, sorry.
Pardon?
Do you mix the gouache and the acrylic on top of each other?
No, I put the acrylic first and then the gouache on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have a little different binders. So if you put acrylic on top of gouache, it will mix with the color under it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I actually don't know quite how that would work. I think that the acrylic binder would be dominant and it would like bind everything down.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding, but I actually have never mixed the two.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that the acrylic binder would take over and it would dry the whole thing, because gouache is like a opaque watercolor. Mm-hmm. So it livens back up if you add water to it.
Nice.
But acrylic, once it's dry, it's dry.
Right.
So
and acrylic you can lay down underneath oil, but you can't do acrylic on top of oil. Right, because it's a water based. So like when you put oil and water in a glass. Nice. Oh, we're running out of time. Oh. Okay. We have like 10 seconds. Parting words. Thank you for all the information.
But yeah, all the mediums are listed.
Yeah, visit her website.
All right.
Bye, Kristen.